Today, on the second ever edition of WrestleMan with the podcast, The Rock concert. He called out Cody and called out Cody's mother, and Cody responded on Raw. And a very promo heavy Raw with segments like Jay and Jimmy, Seth and Drew, the aforementioned Cody Rhodes, and a lot of tag title number one contender matches for WrestleMania, and a bunch of WrestleMania matches are confirmed. So let's not wait any longer. Let's go. Welcome to WrestleMania of the podcast. I'm Dylan Shields. We talk Raw, Smackdown, wrestling news, and some fun top lists. With that being said, ring the bell. Alrighty, what an intro there. So, how we doing, everybody? It is Tuesday, and it is our final normal start time for this podcast, 7 p.m. I promise you that this will, from now on, be the normal time when our podcast usually starts here. For those who don't know, my name is Dylan Shields. I've been a fan ever since 2015, haven't stopped ever since, and it's crazy that I get to do this podcast. I love it. It's for a class, but I definitely want to keep doing it down the line in the future. And a little bit of a spoiler. I don't want to surprise you guys or spoil you guys too much, but I do want to come out with some special episodes in these next few weeks, considering it is WrestleMania season after all, and I am going in person. I might try to do a predictions video that weekend, that Friday, or even that Saturday during the day. Might try to post it. Maybe I'll get some of my friends involved who are going with me and just post a prediction one where it'll be maybe a bit longer than a half hour, honestly. But like I said, it'll be like a special type episode. So that'll be very exciting. And like I said, I definitely want to get some future guests on so you guys hear more than just me talking wrestling. But these first few episodes, like I said, will just be me. All right, let's get into it here. And it seemed like here's the banner here, obviously, with what we're talking about and the media platforms. But it did seem like to me that Raw had a lot more for us to discuss than SmackDown. Not saying SmackDown didn't have anything important; it obviously did. But Raw, like I said, like a segment promo heavy show, and were a lot of segments. So we'll probably be spending a little more time on that than SmackDown, but we'll try to spend time, try to make it sort of even, but we'll see. Alrighty, here, let's get into it. So layeth the Smack Talk again with The Rock being there, just such a fitting title there, and we got the return of the Rock concert. Not only that, but the Rock came out obviously to his new like entrance with like all the lightning shooting out, which was awesome. But then, in almost like a remix type way, it slowly transitioned into his Hollywood theme song from 2003. And I was going freaking nuts. I marked out. I really did. I know a lot of people who even watched back then. I didn't even watch it. Obviously, I was like one when it happened, but seeing the Hollywood Rock videos, and my personal favorite theme of his is that song and that music. It was so good to see that back. The Rock clearly listens to his fans because, yeah, he gave the fans what they want. And for Drew McIntyre here, how is Broken Dreams not back? Because I know he's been pitching to have that back, and yet The Rock, in the snap of a finger, can bring back his Hollywood theme. So hopefully we can bring back some more nostalgic theme songs. But that was awesome. And then, like I said, the return of The Rock concert. He didn't play the guitar. Maybe he can't. Maybe he can't anymore like he used to back in 2003. So he had like he had his own type of not drummer, geez, guitarist, and he he went on to entertain the crowd a lot, like making fun of the Cody crybaby bitches. He mentioned Stardust in his music as well, which was obviously just very entertaining stuff from The Rock, like as usual. And in a weird turn of events here, he really didn't roast Memphis in any way. I think that's like where he started his wrestling career, I believe, was in Memphis. So maybe that's why, excuse me, maybe that's why that Rock didn't exactly roast the crowd, because Memphis was going nuts. It gave me like MJF and Long Island vibes. Like I was like, oh, Memphis turned heel. They're cheering for The Rock, and they're even booing Cody when The Rock mentions him. But after that concert, The Rock started to get a little more serious. And he started he went back to the video of Cody crying on Raw, and Rock was pissed. He did not like that. And he had like a 10-minute Instagram video earlier that day, which honestly, I love the SmackDown videos or segments, but I love the Instagram ones even more because he could swear and say whatever the hell he wants, and he doesn't have to get monetized or in trouble by Fox or any other networks. But Rock basically said, "You got to be shitting me. That's how you respond to the biggest moment of your career slapping The Rock is crying." And I know a lot of people had criticisms of Cody crying last week and not being more of a badass. And we'll get into that when we mentioned Cody on Raw. But The Rock was basically roasting him on that. And then he transitioned to talking about Cody's mama, Cody's mother. And you don't see that out of The Rock that often. You don't see him get that mean and that personal, but he did. And in his Instagram video earlier in the day, he mentioned it that Rock was like to Cody's mom, being like, Cody took something away from me and he's going to pay and you're going to pay. Again, something you don't hear from The Rock that often. And some of the crazy stuff Rock said, like, "Oh, you think Cody's going to hand you that Universal title belt? Like, oh, you're going to get a belt, but you're going to get the Rock's belt." And then he unveiled a belt, and Rock said he's going to whip Cody until he bleeds, and then that blood's going to fall in your hands, and I'm going to hand it to you. And the insane thing that got me into a big pop was The Rock being like, "I'm going to hand this over to you, and then you're going to be crying, but then I'm going to whisper to you, what can I say except you're welcome?" And that one gave me chills. That was freaking insane that The Rock said that. And for those who don't know the movie, I haven't watched in a long time, but Rock's character Maui, that's like a famous song. And it ties into Rock's character and Maui's character because Maui's character for most of the movie is a jerk. He tried to ditch his partner to get on the boat himself and leave her behind. I don't remember what her name is. Like I said, I haven't seen it in a long time. But basically, The Rock's character is kind of like a pretty much a jerk, not a nice person at all. And that just Rock like bringing up like his movies like that, it's just to get like deep and personal with Cody and his mother is just amazing. And then he said, if you smell what the final boss is cooking. And I'm expecting some t-shirts from the final boss. I'm surprised we don't have any Cody Crybaby shirts yet, but maybe they don't want to risk a lot of people wearing that shirts because Cody's the babyface and all of this. But it's just a fantastic segment from The Rock. And I know a lot of criticism for this was people being like, oh, The Rock's so entertaining. He's going to get cheered over Cody and Cody's going to get booed like he was in Memphis. And I want to give a shout out. He's definitely not watching this video, but to Not Sam Roberts. He's like a famous wrestling YouTuber, podcaster. He's done interviews for like decades now, which has been incredible. I watched his podcast earlier today, and he mentioned something that I really liked. And that's kind of the point of The Rock entertaining. Like he kind of like messes with the fans and plays with them. Like, oh, the fun Rock concerts and the entertainment, everybody clapping to what The Rock is saying and everything and chanting to the beat. Like, that's all good and fun. The Rock wasn't really insulting like cities. He was just insulting Cody and Seth in his song. But then, like, normally if this was like babyface Rock, he would just do the concert because like that's what the fans want to see and it's fun. But then The Rock started to get serious. And that's what his version of kind of playing with the fans. Because when The Rock was getting personal with Cody, there weren't a lot of cheers. There were a lot of gasps. Because, like I keep saying, you never heard that from The Rock. At least in years, you have not heard Rock get that personal. So I think what they're doing is perfect. It's a weird dynamic with the crowds because when The Rock's there on SmackDown, he does get cheered. But when he's not there and like Cody's in the ring or even Rock's name is mentioned, they'll chant Rocky sucks. So I'm curious to see the Philly crowd, how they're going to treat The Rock. I think it's going to be a little mixed, but I think because they're like more hardcore-ish crowd, they're going to be rooting for the baby faces and Cody and Seth, the guys who work their ass off. I think Rock and obviously Roman gets booed, which Roman's been getting booed more than he even did last year, which is insane. But it'll be a little bit mixed. But I believe The Rock is still going to get booed. I just think Memphis is like a special town of his, and he acknowledged that in his Instagram promo. So that's why I believe that they cheered him there. But still, I mean, fantastic segment there. Jimmy accepted Jay's challenge, and then they ended up having a segment on Raw, which we'll talk about. Not a surprise there. Uh, LA Knight was standing by the Titantron, was like, I can't find Styles anywhere, and blah, blah, blah. And then Styles attacked LA Knight from behind. Knight challenged Styles to a match at WrestleMania, and Styles accepted. I think we all kind of saw that one coming. It's been a good feud. I understand why people were a bit frustrated that LA Knight's not in a title match like with Logan Paul, because I kind of expected that. But it has been a good feud. It's been going ever since Styles returned, and Styles needs something to do for Mania. So this is really like LA Knight. Like, I love that he started to get feuds. And let's not forget, this guy wasn't even on the card last year, and fans were not happy about it. So let's appreciate the fact that he's at least at WrestleMania and able to have a match and have a pretty good feud. I think this could be a sleeper. I really do. Kind of like Styles, ironically, and Shane. When people were disappointed in that match, they put on a barnstormer, probably the best match of that weekend or that show. I think Styles and Knight can definitely do that. The triple threat match that we talked about last week is official. Randy Orton beat Austin Theory, I believe. And then Nick Aldis kind of had like a funny talk with Logan Paul being like, you have WrestleMania opponents against Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. And then he kind of did like the thumbs up smile, like, and that one kind of made me chuckle a little bit. And then Owens kind of had like a funny face too. And there was a funny moment when Owens and Orton were attacking Theory, and Owens stunned Theory, but Theory, kind of like a video game glitch, like forgot to jump up at the right time. So he just yeeted up in the air like a second lane. Orton RKO'd him. That was that was pretty funny. I mean, those botches, you don't see those that often. It's kind of like Mr. McMahon took that stunner from Stone Cold. Like, yeah, it was horrible, but it was so bad it was funny and good. So just a good moment there. But yeah, very excited for that match. Legado del Fantasma defeated the LWO. I don't think it said like a WrestleMania qualifier match, but I think it was to get a chance at a qualifier match. Hard to believe them not being at Mania, but we'll see. Rey Mysterio attacked Santos and challenged him next week to a match. I believe it's going to be a wash, maybe like a DQ finish or something, because I think we got to see this at Mania. Rey can't not be at Mania, and Santos has been a great heel. So, and yeah, the feud's lasted a bit long, but I mean, I think they've done a pretty good job with this feud. Like I said, I think it's been better than like the Bobby Carey and Cross stuff. I've enjoyed this a little more. Bailey versus Dakota Kai in the main event, and in both SmackDown and Raw, they gave the woman the main event, which I'm very happy about because it's kind of been just dominated by the Bloodline storyline. So I'm happy they're giving other wrestlers, specifically female ones, that main event spotlight. I'm happy about that. Ended in a disqualification. The one thing I really liked was Naomi came out to save Bailey, but Bianca didn't. And I forgot to mention this. Naomi and Bianca had a backstage segment last week, and Bianca's like, I don't feel bad for Bailey. Why are you feeling bad for Bailey? And I like that Triple H's WWE doesn't have wrestlers have the worst memories. Because if this was Vince's WWE, I guarantee you Bianca would just save Bailey and we would just forget about it. Because there's like there could be like rivalries in Vince's WWE, and then like 5 months later they'll tag team. So I'm happy they're having Bianca actually be like, no, Bailey deserves this. And Bianca didn't save her, and they ended up getting beat up by Damage Control in the end. Eventually, Bianca will come to, I believe, and help them out. And what I originally thought was going to happen was Bianca and Naomi versus the Kabuki Warriors for the tag titles at WrestleMania. And I'm happy the tag titles are actually getting a storyline for once. But as we'll talk about later, Asuka apparently got injured, which is just a shame if she can't be at WrestleMania. So again, it's been the best women's feud. I know Rhea Becky's like the bigger like stars, but this has been the better feud definitely because it's been like months, honestly, even years in the making this story, and I can't wait for the match at Mania. Let's get in the Raw rundown. Like I mentioned, a promo heavy show, a lot of promos, but that's kind of how the road to WrestleMania is. It's more on the stick, on the mic, a bunch of segments to get people hyped for the matches. So I'm not going to complain. Usually those are some of the better Raws. It it opened up with Jay and Jimmy getting personal. I love that Jay just got right to it, being like, Jimmy, where you at? And then I love the way Jimmy talks. He's kind of like, I'm your big brother. And everything you've done is because of me. I just love the way Jimmy talks. And then his wide eyes as he's talking. He looks like a complete psychopath. But I love how natural their dialogue feels. And Jay's mentioned in interviews like, get ready for the segments because they're going to feel real. And obviously, their story writes itself. They're two brothers. And you can a lot of people can relate to sibling rivalries. And I know a lot of people, including me, kind of hope. I know I mentioned Styles Knight having a stipulation. If there's any match that could be a Philly street fight or anything like that, it's this one, this personal rivalry. And I wouldn't mind too if it opened up the whole WrestleMania because that'd be a great way to get everything kicked off as well with how over Jay is. And they did a great job this segment. They did. And then Jay denied what Jimmy said. And he's like, nah, my greatest moment's going to be my dream match against you when I knock the yeet out your ass. And then boom, just knock down Jimmy, knock down Solo. Jimmy super kicked him. But then Cody came to the rescue for the save and a smooth transition into Cody's segment, calling out The Rock here. And a lot of criticisms have been made. And I guess rightfully so, about Cody crying and he needs to act more badass, and how when he said he's hunting the bloodline, he hasn't exactly done that yet. Shout out to another YouTube channel called Kicking It with Ross or In the Clutch ENT. I always watch their reaction videos, and he posts wrestling stuff every day, and he's very popular. He kind of had a point, but I think Cody crying and The Rock calling him out on it was kind of the point. It was kind of to get The Rock to poke fun at Cody for that, and then Cody to stab back and act more like a badass. And the criticisms of Cody, they seem to be solved tonight because he did go bloodline hunting, attacking Jimmy and Solo, and then calling out The Rock. Um, Cody mentioned that The Rock calls himself a cool heel, like he made professional wrestling again because he's a heel. And I like that they're calling it. I love that like they're mentioning like heel. And I think Cody mentioned like shout out to Brian Gewartz for like the final boss name. I like that they're mentioning stuff like that and not just pretending like these insider terms are not existent. And I like that they're kind of like pulling back the curtain a little bit. That's the best type of storylines, like a mix of fiction and reality. But Cody basically said, "I don't think you're a heel, Rock. I think you're an asshole," which is which is obviously a great line. He burned him a few times here. He mentioned that Rock hasn't been in the ring in years. So, which Rock are we going to get at Mania? Are we going to get the Rock I loved as a child, or are we going to get LDS, Little Dick Syndrome? And the way Cody delivered that was amazing, and the crowd went nuts. So, see, like you got to let the storyline cook before you criticize too much of how each character's been betrayed, because now Cody's starting to act more like a badass, calling out The Rock like that. He also called Rock a terrible salesman, and when Cody mentioned that, I thought he was going to mention how awful his movies have been recently. So I can't believe I just had the movie that flopped in my head and I completely forgot. I guess that's just how forgettable his movies are. Black Adam. I thought he was going to mention that. Maybe he still will, but yeah, calling him a terrible salesman, a carny succubus. And if people don't know what that means, it means you're a whiny bitch. Again, Cody's delivery on these lines too just make that impact there. And good for Cody to get like a lick in because it has been all like Rock bullying Cody and Seth. So good for Cody to get a shot in. He's also said that like Rock is Roman's side chick. But then Seth, we'll get into in his segment with Drew, said that Roman is Rock's side chick. And so far, the way they presented it, I'm kind of more on Seth's side. It seems like Rock's been doing all the heavy lifting and talking, calling himself the final boss and all these promos. And Roman hasn't said a lot. Cody and Roman are going to be face to face next week, so we'll finally get to hear something from Roman. And I've been saying they need to like make Roman still feel like the hierarchy, the final boss. They got to make sure they do that. So hopefully we'll get that this week. But then Heyman came out and basically said Roman will be alone just with me on SmackDown. So you have to come alone as well. And they made a deal, which I like that. I like that because I just want to see the night 2 main event actually get hyped up because it seems like they've mostly been doing the tag match hype up. So excited for that. Like I mentioned, the Seth and Drew segment again, they just continue to cook. And I said last week, I am on the Drew McIntyre train to win the world title at Mania. I will not accept any other outcome. I don't care how it's done, but Drew has to win. And the way he'll win will be in a hypocritical way, too, because Seth might be like injured from the night 1 match. So that'll be a great like heel way for Drew to win the title. And I'm excited for Drew's reign. I think he'll be a great champion, but this segment here, like I said, Seth called Rock or Roman Rock's side chick and like, I'm going to make them both my bitches night 1, and then I'm going to beat you night 2. And then like the end of their segment, like Seth said, I'm going to make sure that you know you're not as good as you think you are, which was a good ending line. But this opening segment, like Seth basically came out and could like interrupted Drew's music and Drew looked pissed. And then Seth's like, I'm a spotlight junkie and was like pretending to cry. And I love that Drew is just like had enough and just like, all right, Seth, enough of the BS, enough of the games. Like, this is WrestleMania. This is biggest matches of our careers. Like, take it more seriously. But then I liked how Seth called Drew like a hypocrite. Like, you're just as much of a spotlight junkie as I am. And honestly, too, my 2 cents is if you're not a spotlight junkie, then you shouldn't be in wrestling because you should always want to get the spotlight and be number 1 and have all the TV time. So there's nothing wrong with being a spotlight junkie, but they used it a lot here in this promo. And yes, maybe it doesn't have the fire that Seth Punk would have had. Like I said, maybe Punk will get involved in this feud, but I still like their segments. And I think Drew's character is kind of not carrying the storyline, but making it like relevant, making it really good. So that was good. Sammy and Gunther had a contract signing. Gunther said, "Why is Sammy dressed like a bum like the rest of you fans?" Which I liked. And then Sammy's like, "I'm going to take you down at WrestleMania. No one believed in me," like the whole underdog story. The stuff that interested me the most, though, was Gable twice confronting Sammy backstage, kind of like yelling at him a little bit, saying, "You can't," like Gable's kind of wearing a suit, more serious, not in the great mood. And Gable's like, "You can't beat Gunther." And maybe we're leaning towards a Gable heel turn, which I don't know how to feel about that. But if it means like he can maybe get rid of like the silliness of his character and start having a true heel character, maybe Sammy wins the title and Gable's his first challenger. Maybe even Gable costs Sammy the match, something like that. I'm interested in what they're doing with Gable because it seems like they're not leaving him out of WrestleMania, hopefully. The tag title ladder match qualifiers. Awesome Truth beat Jinder Mahal's faction, which we haven't seen them in forever, so it made it obvious who was winning. New Day beat at Alpha Academy, and then DIY beat the Creed brothers, who again we barely see it on TV. So those 3 outcomes were kind of obvious. The Awesome Truth finish was so funny. How Truth just fell on top and won the match. That's so fitting. And R-Truth is going to, I'm telling you, he's gonna break over his fear of ladders, and he is going to climb that ladder and win them the tag titles. And I am so excited for it. I'm happy we got one ladder match at WrestleMania because those always seem to deliver, like I mentioned last week. So I'm excited for that. Candice LeRae's new character. I forgot to mention it last week, and I apologize about that. She kind of like backed Maxine into a corner last week and was basically like acknowledging the online chatter of how much she kind of isn't the greatest wrestler. And she even called out like his dead brother. I forgot exactly what she said, but it kind of haunted Maxine. And they end up losing because of that. And then Candice, I forgot who they beat because I don't pay attention to the women's tag division that much. Although I'm happy that they have stories now. someone kind of got injured and Candice took advantage and won with an ankle lock. So I'm happy they're giving her like a new new edgy type character because we've seen her in NXT as a heel. So I'm excited for that. So great character work again from Candice. And I like that they're acknowledging like the online talk about like Maxine not being a great wrestler and they're using that as a story. I like that they're implementing that. Like again, like mixing fiction and reality is the best type of stories. The main event was Becky versus Nia, last woman standing. Becky eventually winning in a pretty good match. And like I've said, I'd like the way they presented Nia as an unstoppable force, which is ironically her former nickname. But then Rhea confronted her at the end of the show and they had a fun, good standoff. All the people that were saying it's going to be a fatal four-way between them and then Liv and Nia, like, stop it. Like, they're not going to not have just Becky, Rhea, the two biggest names in the women's division right now. They're not just going to not have them do one-on-one matches. I just think they're setting up for later down the line, especially with Liv, maybe either her versus Becky or her versus Rhea at Backlash or something. Maybe she gets involved in the match as well. But yeah, I don't know why people were thinking they're just going to like add it, make it a triple threat. Like Becky won the chamber. Like you can't make that chamber win completely meaningless. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited for this. I know people wanted Liv to be in the match, but I believe she'll still be in the women's title picture after WrestleMania. It's just the biggest women's match they can do, and I'm very excited for it. But yeah, a really good Raw and SmackDown. Like I said, it's been like segment heavy because that's what they have to do on the road to WrestleMania. But I am very excited for what's to come here. Into now, let's get into ring discoveries, aka us just talking about online rumors. Like the aforementioned, Asuka suffered a knee injury on SmackDown. I think when Bayley attacked her, she kind of landed awkwardly on that knee. And that would absolutely suck if she had to miss WrestleMania and probably a pretty big tag title match with Bianca and Naomi. That would suck if she had to miss because of that. I don't know if they can get like I don't know if they can get someone to replace Asuka if they can, I don't know what they can do, but like that's just devastating. With that knee injury that close to Mania, I don't know if she's going to make it or not. And that would be a shame considering the woman, like I said, the women's tag titles in division to finally have a storyline. Just bad timing. There was backstage heat on The Rock in WWE, specifically how he kind of had the freedom to curse and everything and say what he wanted, basically because he's on the board of TKO and he can't say whatever he wants while the other wrestlers have restrictions. My thing and my 2 cents is it's the motherfucking Rock. He's paid his dues and he can do whatever the hell he wants. That's my 2 cents. And also, too, when wrestlers try to get edgy and try to swear to, get people talking, it could kind of come across as cringy. I've seen that from WWE and even AEW at times where just like a word just gets used over and over and over again. Like AEW said the word shit a lot and it just ruins the impact. Like it's not there anymore. But when The Rock does it, you go, because you don't hear it that often. And like I said, he's earned it. Like he has. And when he delivers a line like he delivers it, not a lot of people can deliver corny lines like The Rock. So he's earned in my right to do that stuff. And considering the stuff we heard on Raw last night, it seems like they're kind of listening to that heat and maybe letting them like have a little more freedom on promos and what they want to talk about. Hopefully maybe we'll get rid of the PG tagline maybe when they move to Netflix or something, because just have it be TV-14, honestly. But I don't want to hear the word shit and ass like every single week or every single segment. Save it for the big rivalry. Save it for every once in a while to make it mean something when they say it. Make the impact there. Mercedes Moné had, aka Sasha Banks, made her AEW debut. Like I said, I know it's mainly WWE show, but big moments like this have to be talked about. Her gimmicks like the CEO, and they were chanting that. And like I said, I love that not just WWE, but the AEW women's division definitely got a spark because of that. and she ended up like attacking Julia Hart at the end of the show. She had a great emotional segment, and already she might feel like the biggest female on their roster, and rightfully so. We've been begging for her to return to American wrestling for years, and she has. So I'm excited for what's to come there. CM Punk had like a little bit like of a segment that said he's going to be at WrestleMania 40. I love the line. You can't spell Philadelphia without Phil. I love that little wink, wink, nudge, nudge there. Like I said, I think he'll definitely be in the Seth Drew rivalry, either as like an enforcer or ref. I really want to hear him on commentary because Punk's commentary is just Ingle time. But we'll see what Punk does. But I'm happy to see that he's involved because it's still devastating he couldn't get his main event. Hopefully, maybe next year. Any Raw after Mania returns? I saw a YouTube video from What Culture discussing this. If there's any Raw after WrestleMania returns, I know Braun Strowman was recently cleared again to like train properly. I know he's a possibility. I know the big one's Matt Cardona. That's been kind of rumored for a few years that he might come to WWE as Matt Cardona, which would be awesome. I'm trying to think of others. It doesn't seem like there's as much returns for the Raw after WrestleMania as there used to be. Like back in like 2017 when all like the NXT people got called up. Maybe a few NXT people will get called up, like Trick Williams maybe or something, or Carmelo Hayes, although he's kind of had a few SmackDown matches, but that's the only ones I can kind of think of right now. Maybe Brock, that could be like the big one since we haven't seen him in a long time. But yeah, I mean, those names I mentioned could be, but it's just speculation. There's no really big rumors. I hope we get something though. Because the Raws after WrestleMania recent years have not been that good. Last year's was not that great at all. So I'm hoping, especially in Philadelphia with a hot crowd, we can have a fun Raw after WrestleMania. All right. So the final thing we will discuss is our takedown top 5. And I don't have it spoiled for you guys like I did last week, like the idiot I was. It is the top 5 WrestleManias I have ever watched. And a disclaimer, WrestleMania 32 was the first one I ever watched because I got into wrestling around the summer of 2015. So, yeah, not a great Mania, first Mania to start with, although at the time I actually kind of enjoyed it. But spoiler, that is nowhere near my sorry, top 5 list. Nowhere near it. It's probably actually at the bottom of anything, but let's get into it. Number 5 is WrestleMania 34, which was in New Orleans. This is around the era when the shows were really, really long. They were like 5 hours, like 2-hour pre-show, and then like a 4 or 5-hour main show. This was one of the few where the crowd really wasn't that dead throughout it, but it was still a great Mania. The opening match, the Intercontinental title triple threat with Seth, Finn, and Miz was awesome. Undertaker coming back, although it sucked, the match barely lasted. It was a good moment. Ronda Rousey's WWE debut, obviously, that was probably the match of the night with Kurt against Stephanie and Triple H. But a few disappointments, like the 2 Royal Rumble winners, Asuka's streak ending, which killed her momentum, and then same with Nakamura, with Styles beating him in kind of an underwhelming match. And then Nakamura turned heel, which really didn't work out too much. But there were still like some pretty good moments. Like specifically, I think the first half of the show was good. The second half wasn't that good. I mean, Brock Roman was horrible, really bad. The crowd hated it, and Brock surprisingly won. But I still enjoyed the show and the atmosphere a lot. Great stage too. Number 4 was the year prior, WrestleMania 33. And I believe this is the greatest stage that WWE has ever produced. Even with the long ramp and everything, the globe and then like the roller coasters was just so iconic. That's just such an amazing picture. Another show that lasted way too long, and the crowd this time was definitely tired from it. But like I said, this was another one where like the first half of the show was the better stuff. Like Styles Shane was probably the best match of the night. Rollins Triple H was fine. It was pretty good. I'm trying to it's hard to remember all these because there was a lot of freaking matches on this show. Roman Taker wasn't that great, but Taker had his retirement. It was an emotional moment at the time, but then he'd come back the next year. So even though the match kind of sucked, it was still a pretty good ending. The Hardy Boys return. That was probably the best moment of the night, was that. And then they end up winning the Raw tag titles, which was pretty cool. Man, it's hard to remember this match. This was the one where Owens and Jericho went on second, and this kind of like led to Jericho leaving WWE. So that's a famous moment. Brock Goldberg obviously was probably the best match they've had, probably one of the better matches Goldberg's had. Orton Bray wasn't that great. Rest in peace, Bray Wyatt. Miss you so much. But yeah, overall, I think it edges 34 a little bit based off of moments, but still kind of a long show to get through. Another way too long show, and it seemed like this was the straw that finally got people to realize we need to make this 2 nights, is WrestleMania 35 at number 3. This was kind of like 33 and 34 were decent manias, but this one, despite the length, was really good. 3 specific moments like really made it. Obviously, Becky winning in the main event, despite the crowd being tired and the referee botching the count. Still a really good moment for Becky, biggest moment of her career. Seth Rollins beating Brock Lesnar to win the Universal title was an awesome moment as well. But my personal favorite moment of that show, and a lot of people's favorites, was Kofi Mania. Boy, that even if it was like a quick story, it was one of my favorite storylines I've ever witnessed, for Cody to get the underdog storyline to get to Mania, and ironically facing Daniel Bryan, who was the B+ player, now Kofi was, and they had a terrific match. And Kofi ended up winning. The crowd went absolutely crazy. Just an iconic WrestleMania moment. Even if the Kofi's reign wasn't great, the moment itself was just amazing. And there were a few other things too, like Cena came out, the Dr. Thugonomics, Triple H, Batista, although that was kind of way too long. Corbin retired Angle, which pissed a lot of people off because they wanted Cena to do it. But I think these 3 moments of like the good guys winning the big ones kind of made the show, and it made it really impactful. And it was the first time the females ever main event in Mania, which is obviously an awesome milestone. Hopefully we'll get even more female main events in the future. Number 2 is WrestleMania 38. This one was just a lot of fun. It may have not had the best quality of matches, but it was just so much fun. Johnny Knoxville Sammy, ironically, might have been like my favorite moment of the weekend because that was just so much fun. That match, I recommend going back and watching it if you could find it. And then the other moment I probably liked the most was McAfee versus Theory, just because Michael Cole was going nuts on commentary. McAfee looked great. The atmosphere was electric at the end. Then Vince came out and beat Pat in a horrible 1-minute match, but then Stone Cold came out. Like I mentioned earlier, gave Vince the worst stunner of all time, but I remember just laughing my ass off throughout the whole thing. Like I said, it was just fun. It was a fun WrestleMania. There's obviously like a lot of good serious moments too, like Cody's iconic return to WWE, and it led him to being the star he is today. Even if we all saw it coming, it was just a great moment. Then him and Seth had a great match. Bianca Becky had one of the better women's matches of all time. Roman Brock was a bit disappointing, but I know the injuries to Roman and Brock like kind of affected that. The crowd still seemed to be into it. I will say that. Orton and Riddle, RK Bro retained. Stone Cold, oh yeah, how did I not forget that? Like his return to WrestleMania in a pretty fun like street fight type match against Owens. Just a great moment there. Just like I said, a fun WrestleMania to enjoy with everybody. But my number 1 WrestleMania is last year's WrestleMania 39. This one, it was fun too, but this one had some of the best storylines of all time. I think the best storyline going into this was the Usos versus Owens and Sami Zayn. Kind of like pretty much almost a year-long story of Sami joining the bloodline and then the fallout. And then will Owens join him? And then he eventually does. Obviously, I pretty much said that really simplistic, but if you go back and watch the Bloodline storyline, it was just iconic. The chair shot to Roman Reigns was just absolutely incredible there. And yeah, just and there were amazing matches. Rhea Charlotte was probably my favorite women's match I've ever watched still to this day. And I didn't have high expectations for it, but they blew the roof out the water. Ray versus Dominic, and to see Ray whip his kid. It's a shame Dominic doesn't really have a storyline this year because he had one of the better storylines last year. And it seemed fitting with the Hollywood theme that like the best storylines WWE's produced came at that Mania, like the Bloodline stuff. Edge Finn had a pretty decent Hell in a Cell match. Even like the men's tag team showcase was amazing. Seth Logan Paul was one of the better matches. The best match on that weekend, in my opinion, was the Intercontinental title triple threat. Gunther, Drew, Sheamus. Holy crap. Definitely a match you got to watch if you haven't. If you like people just getting chopped and slapped and like watching a lot of, and you like seeing a lot of like red chests, it's a weird way to say it, but I recommend watching that match because it was so good. Obviously, Roman Cody is one of my personal favorite matches I've ever watched. The finish at the time kind of deflated me and might have taken a little bit off the show a little bit. But looking back, in my opinion, now that we got this Roman Cody 2, I do think it was the right decision to make Cody feel more like an underdog. And the vibes for that match, and just like most of the matches in general, were just so freaking good. And it's going to be really hard for WrestleMania 40 to live up to that because this was a classic. And like I said, the storylines heading into that show were as good as I think WWE's ever done. All right, let's get off this slide here. All right. That is everything. Of course, we went 40 minutes. It's never going to truly go 30 minutes. But I mean, crazy to think that this second episode has come to an end. We will be right back here next week at 7 p.m. You can stream it on YouTube or you can listen on Spotify. It should come out in a few hours once I get it uploaded there. And obviously, you can watch back this stream on YouTube. Like I said, I definitely want to get some guests in here these next few weeks. I definitely want to get some of my friends from Millersville. Like I said, I want to do like a big predictions video on that weekend. I was even thinking about posting a vlog too. I've really never done a vlog, but if I'm going to do one, it should be of me going to WrestleMania because that'll be obviously very exciting. But that is all, folks, for the second episode. I'm Dylan Shields. I'm trying to think of a cool, catchy line. I can't, but see you guys next week. Stay safe, stay humble. Have a good week, guys.